Hey everybody, welcome to Mammoth Interactive's YouTube channel. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. And remember that this channel doesn't do Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital courses down below. And every single dollar that we get from the products you buy below goes into making more content. The best way to help out this channel and Mammoth Interactive is to subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. Get thousands of hours and hundreds of courses for a low price down below. We have a monthly option and a yearly option. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the video.
All right, welcome back. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at how we can kind of manipulate some of the items in this little box here and kind of move around, etc. Okay, so as you can see, I'm kind of moving around here, and moving around is actually really important. Now, if you are on a laptop, I highly recommend just getting a mouse here because it will make development quite a bit easier. A lot of people use them, but for me personally, when you're using the trackpad, there's a lot of mouse movement in game development, and getting a mouse is really good. Also, if you set the speed of the mouse to be higher, you'll actually increase your efficiency a bit, and this is something that, you know, perhaps a lot of people don't understand, but I've done that. My mouse sensitivity is higher, so, you know, my mouse moves quite a bit faster than normal. This came from when I used to be a freelancer, and time was money, so I think I said, you know, well, if I make the mouse faster, I'll probably get the jobs done quicker, and that might be true to some very minor extent. But nevertheless, let's take a look at some of the items here. Now, if you put the right mouse button, you can kind of move around and swivel on a point. If you click the middle mouse button, you can kind of pan, and you can go up, down, and around here. And of course, if you move the mouse wheel, you go forward and back. And one of the things I like doing is clicking right mouse button here, and then using the WASD to fly around. Okay, and this I think is pretty cool, where you can just simply fly around, and you can fly around and look at the entire items here. And plus, WASD controls are very standard within games, so by holding the right mouse button down, and it does work if you hold the middle mouse button down, but I rarely do that. So you can do whichever one you feel like, okay? So moving around's important. Now, the number one tip I want you to understand is, let's say you're working on this cube, you push the F key, for focus, I assume, and basically that will focus you on that item here. So let's say you need to click the player here, you focus it right there. Now this becomes very good in very big and complicated levels. Also, if you look at the level hierarchy here, you can take a look at, let's say you had let's see, if you had the first person character here, you can simply click it and then focus it there. So if you're in a big level, like a huge level, and you need to focus on, I don't know, this big wall here, you can push F, and there you go. It focuses in there. So that's a couple ways of getting around. I just like using the WASD. It makes me feel like I'm kind of playing a video game as is, and there you go. All right, so that's one of the major things that you need to understand when it comes to moving around. The other thing that you need to understand is how to move some of these objects here. So let's move this cube, okay? So you can see this cube. Now, if you think about this in a 3D space, right, it has a location, it has a rotation, and it has scale. So you can see that there's all these different items here. Now, you can click this and move it around, and you can see this moves it on the X-axis, okay? So you can move it forward and backward. And the other thing is, when you use the mouse to do this, you can actually wrap the mouse kind of all the way around. So like you can move this in an infinite direction, whichever way you want, right? You're not good, like if you move your mouse, like you're obviously bound to the screen. Well, you don't necessarily need to do that with this here. You can move the Y, which is green, and everything's color coded, right? And then the Z axis, etc. And of course, if you want to undo everything, you can just push Control Z, or Apple Z if you're on a Mac. Right, rotation, you can rotate it along the X-axis, right? Rotate it on the Y, and then the Z axis there, right? You can kind of see that here. Now, there's a bunch of other things that you need to understand, is that it can be really daunting. Now, do you need to know every single thing that's in this tree here? No. Will you use everything? No. Is it good to know? Well, yeah, it is, but like you should only be concerned about making your game. And the way that I like to do it is that if it is important, you'll learn it, and if it's not important, you probably won't learn it. And a lot of times when you're just about to finish your game and everything is good to go, that's when you learn what, you know, I don't know, for example, the mobile, if you're making a mobile game here, you might figure out what that does. And there's also, just to let you know, in these trees here, you'll see that there's these little items here. It says show advanced. Those are options that are not normally used, right? So the point is that, you know, there's a lot of buttons on the screen. There's a lot of things. Don't feel overwhelmed. Just focus on the basics and you'll get to where you need to go, okay? So at the end of the day, you can kind of see that you can move it around. Now, you can also use this here, right? And you'll notice that this location, X location works here. Here we go. And then we have, here we go. You can move it on the Z, the Y, the X, etc. And you can, of course, undo all those moves as well. Okay, so again, if you want to focus it, and the focus goes in really close. But if you push the E key, this little widget changes. Okay, now you can rotate this on the Z axis. Right? And that's what this widget does, is it rotates it. You can rotate it here, and you'll notice that it snaps, right? It snaps to 10 degrees, and this is highly important. And you can actually change that, but you don't really need to change it right now. So you can kind of see that there is those two widgets here, and mostly if you push the W key, you go back to the location, and then the E key, you get the rotation, and then lastly you get the R here, which is the scale. Now, I highly recommend not using scale, only for prototyping purposes. And by the way, if you click the middle part, right, you can scale it uniformly. Okay, you see that these are all 3.5, and then I can scale it up or down, etc. Okay, so the thing about scaling is that when you slap a material on there, it can get stretched, but that's really a topic for another time. Don't worry about that quite yet. What we should be worrying about, again, is just basically building your game. So those are the things that you kind of need to focus on. Most of the time, you'll be on the location widget here. If we zoom back in here, you can see that there's a couple options. There's relative and world. Don't worry about those quite yet. But for the most part, you can basically see that you can move these around here. Now, some of these objects have physics on it, like I believe this one does. So if I move it up, right, you'll see that it'll fall down and kind of bounce around, right? Now, physics is its own kind of property here, but if you look at this, and if you wanted to see where the physics are of this, you can always search for anything here. Like if you type in location, it will bring up everything you need to do with location. If you bring in, you know, something along the lines of, you know, physics, right, you'll get up everything that you need to do with physics here. And if you unclick that simulation of physics, well, guess what? There is no physics attached to it. So you can really attach physics to any object. You know, I think all of these have physics enabled, right? And you'll notice when I switch from item to item, the physics here, what it does is it stays, like my search stays. So if I was working on physics of my game, then I could absolutely do that here, okay? So those are the basics of moving things around here. Before we go, there's one other thing. So if I push the Alt key or the Shift key, you can see that when I move it around, it follows it, right? And that's actually extremely helpful, right? So let's say here, if I push the Alt key, you can actually duplicate this. So watch this. So let's say I need to make a bunch of cubes. So I'm going to push the Alt key to copy it, and I'm going to push the Shift key to kind of move it around. So you see how that works? So I'm just going to do that here. So I have my cube, push Alt and Shift, and then I can follow it. Alt, Alt, Shift, Alt, Shift, etc. Okay? And there you go. You can see that it can basically copy those as much as you want. Now, if you click the Shift key, you can select more than one item, right? So if I push Alt, Shift, and then I have to let go of the Alt before it moves up again, Alt, Shift, etc. Okay? And as you can see, we now have boxes up there. So I think that's kind of interesting to do. So the other thing that you need to understand, the Shift really does start to work. And I'm just going to undo all this because we don't really need these many boxes here. And if you, by the way, if you push delete, it will delete it. Okay. Now that will only delete it from the level here. Deleting things from the actual game is a lot more of an in-depth process, which we'll talk about in another tutorial. All right. So that concludes this tutorial. And remember to please be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. And if you can share this series on Reddit and Twitter and all those other places, it would also really help me out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.